Hey guys, Vince Luca here, and last time we did Bronco the Warrior, and for this video we're going to be doing a Necromancer, and we're going to go through the skills and everything in depth. So let me go click here on the Necromancer and start up a character just to go see the skill tree. Actually, let's check the overview first and see what she does. So, Undead Army. Summon a host of undead minions to do your bidding, including skeletal warriors, skeletal mages, and golems. Bone magic. Use the power of bone magic to physically assail enemies. Bone skills often gain increased power when you have large amount of essence. Darkness. Wear down enemies over time. Darkness skills utilizes crowd control elements so that enemies are kept away and die a slow, painful death. And finally, we have Blood. Siphon the life from enemies with blood magic, which has defensive benefits, while becoming more powerful as you increase your maximum life. So basically, the Necromancer will raise armies, will use bone magic to protect herself, do some darkness on enemies to make them die slowly over time, and Blood to heal yourself, kind of like vampiric abilities that the more damage you do, the more you'll heal, your maximum life is going to increase, and even create little balls of blood that you could pick up to heal. So for this one, we're going to go with female, and I'm just going to show you a few random looks that you can get from the Necromancer. Meanwhile, make sure to like the video and subscribe, because I'll be doing every class, and hit the bell so that you know when a new class video comes out. If you like this one, if you like the way I go through the entire skill tree, giving you an idea of what kind of build you want to do when Diablo 4 comes out. So if you like these types of videos that go in depth and really look into the details of all the different types of things you can do, make sure to get notified with the bell. So I just chose here a random name, World Tier 2. There's going to be a cutscene here, so I'm going to skip that so that you don't get any spoilers. And here we are with the Necromancer. Let's go into the skill tree and start off with your basic skills first. We got Reap. Sweep the ethereal sight in front of you, dealing damage. Hitting enemies with Reap increases damage reduction. So you deal damage and you take less damage when using Reap. If an enemy hit by Reap dies within 2 seconds, you gain attack speed. Forms a corpse under the first enemy hit when you kill something with Reap, or instantly kills targets below 5% life. That's pretty good. It doesn't work on bosses or players, but it does work on elites, so you could use that on elites, which is pretty powerful endgame. Next up, we have Decompose. Tear the flesh from an enemy, dealing damage per second and forming a corpse. So you're going to see that forming corpse is very important for a Necromancer. Then you can enhance it. So if an enemy dies while being decomposed, you gain some essence. So that's your magic, your mana. And then you could choose, you and your minions deal 10% more damage to enemies that are being decomposed, or Decompose slows the enemies. Next up, we have Hemorrhage. Burst an enemy's blood, dealing damage, and it has a chance to drop a blood orb. Those are the orbs that you could pick up to heal. And after picking up one of those orbs, your next Hemorrhage deals more damage to surrounding enemies. And then you could choose that it fortifies you as it hits enemies, and Fortify is really good for becoming more, I'd say, tanky. Fortified is good. Or you can go with an additional 20% attack speed while you're healthy. So to be healthy, you have to have 80% of your life or more. That means you're healthy, and if you are, then you're gonna get attack speed. Next up, we have Bone Splinters. So you fire 3 bones, dealing damage. Then you have a 30% chance to fire 2 additional bones while you have 50 or more essence. Then you could have a 20% chance to make the enemies vulnerable when they get hit. So vulnerable enemies take 20% more damage. Or hitting the same enemy at least 3 times with the same cast of bones will add critical strike for 4 seconds. So this is good against bosses and big creatures, since your 3 bolts are going to have an easier time hitting that big enemy and causing you to do critical strike. So those are your basics. You got Reap, again, that throws the scythe. I think this is the one I would probably go for if I was building a Necromancer. I'd start with Reap. Let's go into your core abilities. So we got Blood Lance, throws a Blood Lance into an enemy, dealing damage, and deals damage to all other enemies that are also lanced. So that's pretty good. And you could enhance this by making it pierce through enemies who are currently lanced, dealing 15% reduced damage. And then with this, if you have 2 enemies or 1 boss that is affected by Blood Lance, you'll gain attack speed, so you'll go faster, and it's going to cost you less to cast the Blood Lances, which is really good. The less it costs, the more lanced enemies you could have. Or after casting Blood Lance 8 times, your next cast is guaranteed to overpower and spawn a Blood Orb. So Blood Orb heals you, and overpowering deals more damage based on the sum of your current life and your fortified life. So if you're fortified and you have a lot of life, overpowering, you'll do more damage. Now, Blood Surge, draw blood from your enemies, dealing damage, and expels a Blood Nova. This one was really powerful in the beta. It did a lot of damage when you were surrounded with enemies. You could also enhance it so it even heals you for your life as you're doing it. And if you hit more enemies, it's even better. And then you could choose if an enemy is damaged by Blood Surge while you're healthy, you gain a stack of Overwhelming. When you have 5 stacks, your next Blood Surge overpowers. Or each time you hit with Blood Surge, you're fortified, and while you have fortified over 50% of your maximum life, you'll deal more damage. So this thing, Supernatural Blood Surge, was really powerful, kind of OP, I find, in the beta, but I don't know how it is endgame. Next up we have Blight. Unleash Concentrated Blight that deals damage and leaves behind a defiled area that deals damage over time, so that's an AoE. It also slows down enemies when you enhance it. And then you can choose if your minions are in it, they'll deal 15% more damage. So the Blight lasts about 6 seconds. Or you could have 30% chance to immobilize enemies for 1.5 seconds on impact. So you could choose to immobilize or have your skeletons deal more damage. Next up we have Sever. A Spectre of You charges forward and attacks with a scythe, damaging, and then returns to you, also damaging again on the return. So you'll throw basically a ghost in front of you. It's going to do damage, and then it comes back to you, and as it's coming back, it's also doing damage. And so then you could enhance it. The damages enemies along its path for 25% of its initial damage. Then you could choose every 4th cast makes enemies vulnerable, or deals 2% increased damage for each minion you have. So I think you could have up to 8. So that's pretty good. Then you have passive here, Hewed Flesh. Your damage has up to a chance to create corpses, which is really good. And then we have Bone Spear here. Conjure a Bone Spear from the ground, dealing damage and piercing. It could break into shards when it's destroyed. You can make the first enemy vulnerable that it hits, or increase the critical strike chance for it, and also fires 2 additional bone shards when destroyed. So that could be fun. If you want to throw a few bone shards around, that's a pretty good skill. Then we have these passives here. Increase your essence and also increase your damage of your core skills, but they cost more to cast. So 5% more to cast, but they deal 10% increased damage. So those are your basics. Then we have here Macabre. Blood Mist, disperse into a bloody mist and you become immune. So this is good in tight spots where you're about to die. You just Blood Mist into an immune, unkillable, immortal being for how long does it say there? 3 seconds. and your movement speed is increased. So this is a shit, I'm about to die, I'm gonna do Blood Mist and run away. And if you cast a skill that overpowers, it reduces the cooldown of Blood Mist, and then you could choose that it leaves behind a corpse every second. So for 3 seconds it's 3 corpse, or it can give you Fortify. So the corpse one is a good option if you're Necromancer. Then we have passives like gain some thorns here, or increase the damage and life of your spawns, your skeletons. And then you have Bone Prison, which unearths a prison of bone with 12 life, and it surrounds its target. It's actually pretty hindering if you're playing with teammates. It could actually block them. And you could have Bone Prison gain essence, and then you could have it Fortify, giving you base life for each enemy trapped inside. So yeah, you get fortified when you do that, or enemies inside it are vulnerable, so they'll take more damage. Bone Prison is pretty good, but again, when you're playing with teammates and stuff, it could actually hinder them. You could block doorways with it, and then your teammates can't pass through it. It's not the best when playing co-op with your friends. Then we got some passives over here. Consuming a corpse gives you essence, and you deal increased damage for 4 seconds after consuming a corpse. Then we have a skill here, Corpse Explosion. I love this one. Detonate a corpse. It deals damage all around the corpse that exploded. It was actually pretty powerful when I used it in the beta. The radius can be increased, so as it explodes even further. And it could also become a darkness skill. Instead of exploding, just doing a lot of damage over time, but I went with this one where it deals more damage when it explodes to enemies that are slowed, stunned, or vulnerable. So this one was pretty powerful as a skill for Necromancer. So those are your corpse skills, Macabre skills. These are the two that I really liked, the Blood Mist and the corpse. So you would go into Blood Mist, put corpse all over the floor, and then come back here and explode those corpse, which was saving me a lot from dying actually. Next up we have curses. So curse the target area. This is Iron Maiden. Enemies affected by Iron Maiden take damage each time they deal direct damage. So that lasts for 10 seconds. That's pretty good. No longer costs essence. Instead you gain essence for each enemy cursed. That's pretty good. So you got this free curse that gives you essence. You could also have it heal for 5% of your life, or if there's 3 enemies inside it, it's increased damage. We got some passives here. Deal 3% increased damage to cursed enemies, and close enemies take 2% more damage, but you also take 3% less damage. Then you have you deal 4% increased damage to distant enemies, so that's pretty good passive. Increase the damage and life of your skeletal mages. That's also really good if you're going to be summoning a lot of mages and corpses and stuff. And then we have the Decrepify here. It's a skill. Curse the target area. Enemies affected by the Decrepify are slowed and deal 20% less damage. That's pretty powerful. I don't know if it works on bosses and elites, but 20% less damage is massive. Then enemies hit with this have up to a 10% chance to be stunned. That's pretty powerful as well. And you could choose if they're hit, they have a chance to reduce your cooldowns, which is good. Or when you or your minions hit an enemy below 10% life, they're instantly killed. Nice. So this could be really good with the scythe at the beginning of the your skill tree that also kills enemies under 5% life. So that's gonna be pretty powerful. All right, this part of the skill tree only has 2 abilities but a bunch of passives. So let's take a look at them. Corpse Tendrils. Veins burst out of corpse, pulling enemies and stunning them. It does not consume the corpse, so this is really good as well if you're doing a lot of corpse stuff. It doesn't consume them, and it does something like pulling them in. So you pull them in, then you do an explosion. It's beautiful to see. Enemies who are in range of corpse tendrils are also slowed before they're being pulled. So they get pulled in, they're slowed. And if they get damaged, they could also drop a blood orb healing you, or if they get damaged, they are vulnerable for 3 seconds. So this is really good if you're playing with corpses. These are all passives here while you're healthy. Your blood skills heal you. This is like a lot of fortify stuff to make you heal, blood orbs. It's all basically survival stuff. Then we have Bone Spirit here. Consume all of your essence to conjure a spirit of bones that seeks enemies. Upon reaching the enemy, it explodes, dealing damage to it and surrounding enemies. Damage is increased by 3% for each point of essence you spent when you cast it. If it critically strikes, the cooldown is reduced by 6 seconds. And you could choose that if it hits an enemy, you generate more essence, or has an additional critical strike chance. So that could be pretty powerful as well. Then we got some passive here. Your bone skills increase critical strike chance. Every 100 essence you spend reduces the cooldown of your bone skills. So this is all stuff with your bone skills, like critical strike, critical damage. If you want to be like a critical necromancer, you might want to go with bones and then go put some points in there. Then we have damaging enemies with darkness, increases your movement speed. So this is probably going to be a lot of darkness skills, passive stuff for your darkness skills. Like this one, darkness skills have 15% chance to stun, so that's pretty good. And this one deals bonus damage to enemies who are slowed, bonus damage to stunned or immobilized. So you could try to do some combos here with stunning and immobilizing and doing some dark damage over there. Now let's go take a look at the rest of the tree here. We have the ultimates. So these ones here, you can only have one at a time, so you could choose which one you want to take. For example, Blood Wave, conjure a tidal wave of blood that deals damage and knocks back enemies. It can also slow enemies by 50%, and it leaves blood orbs for you to heal when you cast it. So that's pretty good. It's a cool tidal wave. Then you got this Golem Mastery, increase the damage and life of your golems that you summon. And we have Army of the Dead. Call forth the deep buried dead. Volatile skeletons emerge for the next 7 seconds and explode around the enemies, dealing damage. So basically a bunch of skeletons come up, they explode, and they do a bunch of damage. They can also have a 15% chance to leave behind the corpse. That's pretty good. And also raises your skeletal warriors and your skeletal mages. I'll get into your skeletons later on that come out. But yeah, this is pretty good if you're dealing with corpses and summons. And then we have passives here. Inspiring Leader. After you've been healthy for 4 seconds, your minions have more attack speed. Your minions deal 10% increased damage. Your minions cannot lose more than 70% of their maximum life. So this part of the tree is all about your minions. Every 5 seconds, your skeletal priest heals the skeletons. So this is a good area to put points in if you are dealing with skeletons. Bone Storm. A swirling storm of bone appear around you and your golem. You could also enhance this. Your damage reduction is increased while Bone Storm is active, and your critical strike chance is increased. So you could crit and have some protection. Next up we have passives. So your bone skills deal increased damage for each point of essence you have above 50 when you cast it. So these are all passives down here. These are things that just happen as you use your skills and your ultimates and stuff like that. This one could be really good if you're going all in with bones. And next up we have increase your maximum life. After being healthy for 15 seconds, your next blood overpower. So your next blood skill will overpower. So that's passive, but it's situational. Then we have shadow damage infects enemies with shadow blight. You and your minions deal 10% more damage to them. And then every 10th time an enemy receives shadow damage from you or your minions, while they have shadow blight, they take even more damage. So this is good if you're going into a shadow build. shadow damage, darkness build. After you have not taken damage in the last 3 seconds, your minions gain attack speed. This could be really good if you're doing just minions, and this bonus is doubled if you have 7 minions or more. So your minions are gonna go much faster, like a lot faster. So that's the skill tree here for the Necromancer. We went through all of it, and hopefully it gives you an idea of what you want to do. I would go with like corpse, a lot of corpse stuff. And what you could do is go into your keywords here, your search, which is a really useful tool. Like I said in my Barbarians video, just open your keyword search before playing Diablo or when you make your character, and just look at your skill tree and look at these keywords and see what the Necromancer can do. So if I want to do, for example, let's see here, there's blood, attack speed. There's a bunch of things that you could go with, but let's say you want to be like a healer and you want to drop a bunch of blood orbs for your players, and you want to also do stuff with corpses. Just click on those two, and maybe your minions if you want to do a lot of minion stuff. And clicking these is gonna highlight the skill on your skill tree that has these words in it. So the more words you put, obviously the more skills are going to be highlighted, and then they're going to tell you like where to put your points if those are the skills or abilities that you want while you're playing Diablo, and if you want that in your build. So if you want, for example, some corpses, then you need to put some points in here because it's going to form a corpse for you. If you're looking for healing, then you know that there's blood orbs here because I chose it as a keyword, and that part is actually glowing on my skill tree, so I would want to put points in there. So it's a really good, useful tool, the keyword search, especially before you play, just to get oriented with your skill line. So here we got some blood orbs as well. And yeah, I think this is what I'm gonna do for each class before playing Diablo. Is as soon as I created my character, I'm gonna go into the skill tree here and do some keyword searches and just look at how I'm gonna be spending my points, where I'm gonna be putting my points. Like I know this little passive is gonna give corpses. I know that blood mist is eventually going to give me corpse as well every second. This is going to explode the corpse. So it's a really useful tool to know where you want to go, what you want to do with your build. This one consumes corpse, and you deal more damage after you consume corpse. There's a lot of things that you might miss, or you might not think is worth putting points in because you think that, oh, well, if it's in that tree, then it's probably not useful for my build. But it's going to highlight it for you, and it's going to tell you exactly what you want to put your points. Too bad the beta didn't let us go further into the skill tree. It would have been cool to maybe in the beta at least give us all the points without giving us all the story, just so we could have tested some builds and balancing issues, because there's a lot of balance issues right now in the forums with when it comes to Necromancer and the Sorcerer as being OP, while the Barbarian is kind of useless. But we don't know that until we actually play the game, go to end game, and actually see a full build, what's the potential for the Barbarian, and how well the minions are going to survive at end game. Like the Necromancer was really good at the beginning, but who knows if it's going to be that good at end game, you know what I mean? It's kind of sucks that we didn't get that that beta. They should probably give us a beta before the game comes out, another one, just with a bunch of skill points that we could play around with in the skill tree, and you know, just so that we could all test it out for them, let them know what needs to be buffed, what needs to be nerfed and stuff like that. Would have been useful. But yeah, going back to this skill tree for the Necromancer, I feel like going through this with you guys on this video and going through all of these gives me a clear idea of what I'm gonna be doing with my Necromancer. and that idea is going to be a lot of healing, a lot of blood orbs that are going to drop all over the place, and creating a bunch of corpses as much as I can to blow them up so that they do damage all over the place. And while they blow up, they're gonna leave some blood orbs for me and my friends to heal on. That will probably be my build going forward with the Necromancer. But again, you could do like a shadow damage type of Necromancer. So if you put shadow damage, you're gonna see a bunch of trees here, and you know that this is a good passive that you're gonna want to do. But you can see that there's no real ultimate skill for shadow damage or anything like that. But again, maybe without it, you'll still be really powerful doing darkness damage and doing a lot of additional blight damage to enemies. So there's a lot you can play with here with your keywords before actually playing the game. But for the Necromancer, I also want to show you the Book of the Dead here. So this is where you decide what your minions do. So you have skeletal warriors, skeletal mages, and then the golems that unlock at level 25. So you could choose if your skeleton warriors are skirmishers, and if they're skirmishers, you can raise an additional skirmisher warrior if you put the point here in the first circle of skirmishers. So you'll have one additional skirmish warrior. Or if you put it here, each time you critically strike, your skeletal warriors also critically strike and deal more damage. Or you could have this one here. Your critical strike chance is increased, but you can no longer have skeletal warriors. So if you want, you could be a Necromancer that has no minions at all, and then just put your points into that little diamond-shaped skill there on the side. So for example, defenders here, you could increase the amount of thorns that your skeletons do if you want to be the more defending, more tanky type of skeletons. Or again, you could come to this diamond here. You gain non-physical resistance, but you can't raise skeletal warriors. Then you could have like Reaper skeletons. So Reaper attacks against enemies who are immobilized, slowed, or stunned. Reduce the cooldown of a more powerful attack by 2 seconds. So you could use that one for them. Or the Reapers have a 15% chance to carve the flesh of enemies, making a corpse. So that could be good if you're doing the corpse build. That's what I'm probably going to do. Minion Reapers that leave behind corpses like this, that would be where I put my point. Or again, if you don't want minions, you could have this one. You deal 10% increased shadow damage, but you have no skeletal warriors. Next up, you have skeletal mages that also come into play. You could have shadow mages, so they attack and have 10% chance to stun. Or they could fire an additional shadow bolt every 6th attack. Or again, not have any, and your maximum essence is increased by 15, which is pretty good. You could have cold mages, so each time they damage enemies, you gain 2 essence. Or enemies who are frozen or damaged while frozen are vulnerable for 3 seconds. So that's cool if you have a sorcerer that's doing a lot of cold damage in your team. Then you would do this, making them all vulnerable. And this one deals 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, but you have no more skeletal mages. And then you could have the bone skeleton mages and the golems. So hopefully this video has given you an idea of what the Necromancer is all about. And stay tuned for the next classes coming up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.